You know, dear ones, there are moments in life when someone mistakes your kindness for weakness, your generosity for obligation, and your silence for defeat. I'm 72 years old, and I'll never forget the day my daughter-in-law Jennifer stood in my living room, pointed her finger at me, and said with such venom, such entitlement, "Stop interfering in our lives. We don't need your constant meddling. We're adults and we can handle our own affairs." I just sat there quietly, didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't explain that every bit of interference she was complaining about was actually financial support I'd been providing for years. Support that was keeping their lifestyle afloat. Support they'd come to expect and demand without ever once saying thank you. But here's what I want you to think about. What would you do if someone you've been helping for years, someone you'd supported and funded and lifted up, turned around and told you to stay out of their life while still expecting your money to keep flowing into their bank account? Would you keep giving? Would you cut them off completely? Would you teach them a lesson about gratitude and consequences? Or would you just walk away? If you want to know what I did when Jennifer told me to stop interfering, how I stayed completely calm while making one phone call that changed everything, and what happened when she tried to access the trust fund I'd set up for my son and discovered what I'd done, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now and hit that like button. Because this story is going to show you that you should never bite the hand that feeds you. And the look on Jennifer's face when she realized what stop interfering actually cost her? Well, that was priceless. And the twist at the end when she came crawling back. You won't believe how that turned out. It all started about 8 years ago, when my son Marcus married Jennifer. I'll be honest, I had reservations from the beginning. Not because she wasn't pretty or charming or educated. She was all those things. But there was something about the way she looked at our family home. Something about the questions she asked about my late husband's estate. Something about how quickly the conversation always turned to money and assets and inheritance. I should have trusted my instincts. Should have seen the red flags. But Marcus loved her, and I wanted my son to be happy. So I welcomed her into our family and I really tried to build a relationship with her. When you're a widow in your 70s, when your husband has passed and your children are grown, and you're living alone in a house that used to be full of noise and life, there's this desperate need to stay connected to family. To feel useful. To feel needed. To feel like you still matter to the people you raised and loved and sacrificed everything for. I'll admit I was vulnerable to that. Vulnerable to the idea that helping my son financially meant staying relevant in his life. Meant ensuring he'd still call. Still visit. Still include me in his world. My husband Robert had been a successful businessman, and when he passed, he left me very well provided for. We'd always planned to help our children. Always intended to make their lives easier. To give them opportunities we didn't have. I'd set up a substantial trust fund for Marcus, managed by me as trustee, with regular disbursements to help him and his wife. Over the years, those regular disbursements had turned into constant requests. Constant needs. Constant emergencies that required my financial intervention. Jennifer had expensive taste. Really expensive taste. Somehow, every conversation we had ended with her mentioning something they needed. A new car because theirs was unreliable. A bigger house because they needed space to grow their family. Furniture. Vacations. Designer clothes. Private school tuition for kids they didn't even have yet. The list just went on and on. I've been saying yes. Been writing checks. Been transferring money. Because I thought that's what good mothers did. Thought that helping your children meant never saying no. Thought that my money could buy me a place in their lives. But with every check I wrote, with every wire transfer I approved, Jennifer's gratitude decreased, and her entitlement increased. The thank yous became less frequent. Became perfunctory. Became non-existent. The requests became demands. Became expectations. Became something she felt owed to her simply because she'd married my son. I watched this transformation happen. Watched her go from sweet and appreciative to cold and demanding. And I made excuses. Told myself she was stressed. Told myself marriage was hard. Told myself I was being too sensitive. When really I should have been setting boundaries. Should have been requiring respect. Should have been teaching her that my generosity was a gift, not a right. About a year before the big confrontation, Jennifer got pregnant. I was thrilled. Absolutely thrilled at the idea of becoming a grandmother. I thought maybe this would change things. Maybe the baby would soften her. Maybe becoming a mother would help her understand the depth of a parent's love and sacrifice. For a little while it seemed like it might. She was nicer to me, more inclusive, asking my advice about baby things, inviting me to doctor's appointments. I felt needed, felt valued, felt like finally we were building the relationship I'd always hoped for. I went overboard preparing for my grandchild. I'll admit that. I bought everything. The crib, the stroller, the car seat, clothes, toys, books. I'd even paid to have their spare bedroom renovated into a beautiful nursery. Spent probably $30,000 on that room alone. Jennifer had seemed grateful, had hugged me and said, "Thank you, Mom. This is so generous." Hearing her call me Mom had melted my heart, had made me feel like finally I was really part of their family, really accepted, really loved. When my granddaughter Emma was born, I was at the hospital. I held that baby minutes after she entered the world. I felt this overwhelming love, this sense of purpose, this feeling that all the money, all the help, all the effort had been worth it. Because now I had this precious new life to be part of, to watch grow, to spoil and love and cherish. I'd promised myself I'd be the best grandmother possible, would be present and supportive and involved. I'd set up another trust fund, this one for Emma, a college fund that I'd been contributing to monthly, building a nest egg that would ensure my granddaughter's future. I felt good about that. Felt like I was doing something meaningful, something that mattered. Marcus had seemed happy too, seemed grateful for my help, seemed to appreciate everything I was doing for his family. There were moments, beautiful moments, when the four of us would be together and it felt like a real family. Felt like the money didn't matter. Felt like we were connected by something deeper than financial transactions. I held on to those moments, treasured them, used them to justify all the times Jennifer was cold or dismissive or rude. Told myself that underneath it all she cared. She appreciated me. She valued my presence in their lives. But then the requests started getting bigger, more frequent, more demanding. There was this shift in Jennifer's tone, this edge that crept into her voice when she talked to me. Instead of asking for help, she started telling me what they needed, started treating me like an ATM instead of a person. When I'd hesitate, when I'd question whether something was really necessary, she'd get this look on her face, this cold, calculating look. She'd say things like, "I thought you wanted to be involved in our lives," or, "I guess you don't really care about Emma's well-being." She'd weaponize my love for my granddaughter, use it against me, use it to manipulate me into giving more and more and more. I started noticing that the only time Marcus called me was when they needed money. The only time they'd invite me over was when they wanted me to see something they needed me to pay for. My time with Emma was increasingly supervised and limited. Jennifer always had some reason why I couldn't take her alone, why I couldn't babysit, why I couldn't have the grandmother-granddaughter time I craved. I started to understand that my access to my granddaughter was being controlled, was being used as leverage, was being parceled out based on my financial generosity. Then came the incident that should have been my wake-up call. About 3 months before the final confrontation, I'd planned a special day with Emma. She was almost 2 by then. I'd arranged to take her to the zoo, just the 2 of us. Jennifer had agreed. But when I showed up to pick Emma up, Jennifer said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot we have plans today. Maybe next time." I could see through the window that Emma was just sitting inside watching TV. There were no plans. Jennifer just didn't want me to have that time with her. When I said, "But we planned this weeks ago," Emma was so excited. Jennifer's face hardened. She said, "You know, you need to understand that she's our daughter, not yours. And we decide when and how you see her. Maybe if you weren't so controlling and interfering all the time, we'd be more willing to let you have time with her." Then she shut the door in my face. Actually shut the door while I stood there on the porch, holding the stuffed giraffe I'd bought for Emma. I felt humiliated, felt dismissed, felt like all my generosity, all my help, all my love meant nothing to this woman who saw me as nothing more than a source of money and free childcare when it was convenient for her. The final confrontation came on a Sunday afternoon. I'd stopped by to drop off some things for Emma, some clothes I'd bought and some books. Jennifer opened the door and didn't invite me in, just stood there blocking the doorway. I could see Marcus in the background looking uncomfortable. I asked if I could see Emma for just a few minutes. Jennifer sighed. Actually sighed like I was being such an inconvenience. She's napping, she said. I said, oh, I can wait. That's when her face changed. When something inside her just snapped. No, actually we need to talk about something, she said. Marcus and I have been discussing this, and we've decided that you need to stop interfering in our lives. Stop showing up unannounced. Stop buying things we don't ask for. Stop acting like you have any say in how we raise our daughter or run our household. She continued. We're adults. We don't need a mother hovering over us constantly. Frankly, your interference is causing problems in our marriage. I just stood there stunned, trying to process what she was saying, trying to understand how wanting to be part of my granddaughter's life, how helping them financially, how any of what I'd been doing could be characterized as interference. I started to say something, started to defend myself. But Jennifer held up her hand. We don't want to discuss it, she said. We don't want to hear your excuses or your justifications. We just need you to respect our boundaries and give us space. And if you can't do that, then maybe we need to seriously limit your contact with Emma. Because we don't want her growing up thinking this kind of overbearing behavior is normal. She said, overbearing. She called me overbearing. Me, the woman who'd been funding their lifestyle, paying their bills, buying their daughter everything she needed. I felt something inside me just go cold. Felt the love and hope and desperate need for connection just freeze over and turn into something else. Something harder. Something that saw clearly for the first time what was really happening here. Marcus finally spoke up then. Came to the door and said, Mom, maybe Jennifer's right. Maybe we do need some space. Maybe you've been a bit too involved. Hearing my own son, the boy I'd raised, the man I'd supported his entire life, hearing him side with her, hearing him validate her cruelty. That was the moment I knew exactly what I had to do. Knew exactly how to respond to being told to stop interfering. I smiled. Actually smiled. I said very calmly, very quietly, of course. I understand completely. I'll give you all the space you need. Jennifer looked relieved. Looked satisfied. Looked like she'd won something. Good, she said. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Then she closed the door. I stood there on that porch for just a moment. Then I walked to my car, got in, pulled out my phone and dialed my attorney's number. I sat in my car outside their house. When my attorney David answered, I said very calmly, very clearly, David, I need you to freeze the trust fund. Effective immediately. Halt all disbursements, all transfers, all access. And I need you to do it right now. Today. This afternoon. There was a pause. David said, Are you sure about this? Once we freeze it, there will be legal implications. There will be questions. I said, I'm absolutely sure. My daughter-in-law just told me to stop interfering in their lives. So I'm going to honor that request. I'm going to stop interfering in every possible way, starting with their access to my money. I could hear the smile in David's voice when he said, I'll have the paperwork filed within the hour. Because David had been warning me for years that Jennifer was taking advantage. Had been suggesting I put conditions on the trust. Had been trying to protect me from my own generosity. And now finally I was listening. I didn't yell. Didn't make threats. Didn't tell Jennifer or Marcus what I was doing. I just drove home. And I waited. Because I knew it wouldn't be long. Knew they had bills coming due. Knew they had expenses they couldn't cover without the trust fund distributions they'd come to depend on. Knew that Jennifer's comfortable lifestyle was built entirely on my money. And the moment that money stopped flowing, the entire house of cards would collapse. I wanted to see it. Wanted to watch them realize that stop interfering had consequences. That you can't tell someone to stay out of your life while still demanding access to their bank account. The first distribution from the trust was scheduled for the following week. A monthly payment of $5,000 that they used for their mortgage and car payments and general expenses. I knew when that payment didn't arrive, when their bank account didn't get that expected deposit, there would be panic. I knew they'd call me. Knew they'd expect me to fix it. Knew they had no idea what was coming. I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt powerful. Felt in control. Felt like I was finally setting boundaries and demanding the respect I deserved. It wasn't about revenge exactly. It was about dignity, about self-worth, about teaching entitled people that generosity is a gift that can be withdrawn when it's not appreciated. And I was ready, so ready for what came next. The phone started ringing exactly 8 days later. Early in the morning. It was Jennifer. Her voice had this edge of panic, this controlled hysteria. The trust fund payment didn't come through, she said. There must be some mistake. Can you check with your bank? I said very calmly, there's no mistake. I've frozen the trust fund. There won't be any more distributions. There was this silence, this long shock silence. Then Jennifer said, her voice getting shrill. What do you mean you froze it? You can't do that. We depend on that money. We have bills due. We have a mortgage payment. You can't just cut us off without warning. I said, still calm, still pleasant. Actually, I can. I'm the trustee. I have complete discretion over distributions. And since you made it very clear that you don't want me interfering in your lives, I've decided to honor that request by removing my financial interference as well. I continued. You said you're adults who can handle your own affairs. So now you can prove it. Jennifer started yelling then. Actually yelling. Saying I was being vindictive. Saying I was punishing them for setting boundaries. Saying I was using money to control them. Oh, the irony. The absolute irony of her saying I was using money to control them, when she'd been using my granddaughter to control me. When she'd been manipulating me for years by dangling access to Emma like a carrot. I let her yell. Let her rant. Let her reveal exactly who she really was. Then I said, you told me to stop interfering. I'm just respecting your wishes. If you need financial help, I'm sure you can figure it out, like the capable adults you claim to be. And I hung up. Just hung up on her mid-sentence. Felt amazing. Felt liberating. Felt like taking back my power after years of being used and manipulated and treated like nothing more than a checkbook. Marcus called next. He was nicer. More careful. Trying the approach of, Mom, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Jennifer was just stressed. She didn't mean it the way it came out. I said, then she should apologize. She should acknowledge how she's treated me. She should show some basic respect and gratitude for everything I've done for your family. And until that happens, the trust fund stays frozen. Marcus got quiet. Then he said something that told me everything I needed to know about where his loyalty lay. He said, Mom, you're putting me in an impossible position. I have to live with her. I have to keep peace in my marriage. And if you're going to force me to choose between you and my wife, I'm going to choose my wife. I said, then you've made your choice. And you'll have to live with the consequences. And I hung up on him too. It hurt. It really hurt. But it was also clarifying. Because I finally understood that I didn't have a son who loved me. I had a son who loved my money. And those are very different things. 3 weeks went by. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of no phone calls, no visits, no photos of Emma. Nothing. I'll admit, there were moments when I wavered. Moments when I thought maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should just give in and restore the trust fund and go back to the way things were. But then I'd remember Jennifer's face when she told me to stop interfering. I'd remember Marcus choosing her over me. I'd remember years of being treated like an ATM. And I'd stay strong. Stay resolved. Stay committed to my boundaries. Then came the knock on my door. Late one evening. It was Jennifer. And she looked terrible. Really terrible. Her hair was messy. Her face was blotchy like she'd been crying. Can we talk? She said. Please. Just for a minute. I almost said no. Almost closed the door. But something in her face, something desperate and broken, made me step aside and let her in. She sat on my couch and started crying. Really crying. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry. I was awful to you. I was ungrateful and cruel. You didn't deserve that. You've been nothing but generous and kind, and I took advantage of that. I took advantage of you. And I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. Just waited. Because I needed to know if this apology was real, or if it was just manipulation. Just another attempt to get access to the money. Jennifer kept talking. Kept explaining that they were in serious financial trouble. That they'd been living beyond their means for years. That they'd racked up credit card debt and taken out loans, assuming the trust fund payments would always be there. Now everything was falling apart. They were facing foreclosure on the house. Their cars were about to be repossessed. And Marcus had lost his job. Had actually been let go 2 months ago and hadn't told anyone. Had been lying about going to work every day while their financial situation spiraled completely out of control. She said, "I know I have no right to ask for anything. I know I destroyed any goodwill you had toward me. But I'm not asking for us. I'm asking for Emma. She's innocent in all this. She didn't do anything wrong. And she's going to lose her home, her stability, everything. I can't let that happen. I can't let my pride and my mistakes hurt my daughter." Watching her break down, watching her finally show real emotion, real remorse, real understanding of what she'd done, I felt something soften in me. Not forgiveness exactly. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. Maybe the possibility of it. But then she said something that changed everything. "I need you to unfreeze the trust fund," she said. "I need you to give us enough to get back on our feet. And I promise, I swear, things will be different. I'll be grateful. I'll be respectful. I'll let you see Emma whenever you want." There it was. The manipulation. The bargaining. The using of my granddaughter as a negotiation tool. I realized this wasn't really about remorse. This was about desperation. This was about needing my money and being willing to say whatever it took to get it. I felt that brief softness harden right back up. I said, "No." Jennifer's face went white. Absolutely white. "What do you mean no?" she said. "I just apologized. I just explained the situation. I'm begging you. What more do you want from me?" I said very calmly, "I want you to understand that apologies don't erase years of mistreatment. That saying sorry doesn't obligate me to bail you out of problems you created. That my money is not the solution to your dysfunction." I continued, "If you actually cared about Emma's well-being, you'd get a job. Marcus would get a job. You'd downsize your lifestyle. You'd take responsibility for your choices instead of expecting me to fix everything with a check." I watched her face transform, watched the fake remorse disappear and the real anger emerge. She stood up. "You're a selfish, bitter old woman," she said. "You're using money to punish people and control them. And one day you're going to die alone and no one's going to care, because you chose money over family." She walked out, slammed my door so hard the windows rattled. I sat there thinking about what she'd said, about whether it was true, about whether I was choosing money over family, or whether I was finally choosing dignity over being used. The truth I've learned over these past months is that real family, real love, it doesn't come with conditions. It doesn't require payment. It doesn't use children as bargaining chips. It doesn't demand you make yourself smaller, or accept mistreatment or sacrifice your self-respect to maintain a relationship. What I had with Jennifer and Marcus wasn't family. It was a transaction. It was me buying access to my son and granddaughter with money I could afford to give and they couldn't afford to refuse. That's not love. That's not connection. That's just a business arrangement dressed up in family language. I did eventually restructure the trust fund, but with conditions, with strings, with requirements. Marcus had to get financial counseling. They had to live within their means. I had guaranteed access to Emma. They had to treat me with basic respect and gratitude. They complied. They had no choice. They needed the money too badly to refuse. But the relationship never recovered. Probably never will. And I've made peace with that. Because I learned that being a good mother doesn't mean being a doormat. Being generous doesn't mean being stupid. And loving your children doesn't mean accepting whatever treatment they decide to dish out. The real lesson here is about boundaries and self-worth. About understanding that you teach people how to treat you by what you tolerate. I've been tolerating disrespect for years. Had been accepting crumbs of affection in exchange for thousands of dollars. Had been so afraid of being alone that I'd bought relationships that weren't real. Freezing that trust fund, making that one phone call to my attorney, that was the moment I finally valued myself enough to demand better. To expect better. To settle for nothing less than genuine respect and appreciation. If that makes me selfish or bitter or controlling in some people's eyes, well, those people don't understand what it's like to be used by the very people you die for. And their opinions don't matter to me anymore. I'm 72 years old now and Emma is 4. I see her regularly now, not as much as I'd like, but more than I did during those dark weeks when Jennifer told me to stop interfering. My relationship with her is the only good thing that came out of this whole situation. Because she knows her grandma loves her. Knows I'm a safe place. Knows I'll always be there for her. That matters. That means something. Even if her parents and I will never be close, never have the warm, loving relationship I once hoped for. The trust fund is still active, still providing support. But it's controlled now. It's structured. It has boundaries and conditions and requirements. Jennifer hates it. Hates that she can't just take whatever she wants whenever she wants it. Hates that there are strings attached. But she tolerates it because the alternative is worse. I'm okay with that arrangement, because it protects me, protects Emma, and ensures that my generosity can't be weaponized against me the way it was before. When I froze that trust fund, when Jennifer tried to withdraw money and discovered it was gone, when she realized that stop interfering meant I'd actually stopped, completely stopped, the panic in her voice was real. The fear was real. The understanding that she'd made a catastrophic mistake was real. I don't take pleasure in that. Don't feel vindicated or victorious. I just feel sad that it had to come to that. Sad that my son married someone who saw me as an asset to be managed rather than a person to be loved. Sad that money became the only language we spoke in this family. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been in a situation where your generosity was taken for granted, where your help was expected rather than appreciated, where you had to set painful boundaries to protect your dignity, please subscribe to this channel right now and hit that like button. I'll be sharing more stories about navigating family relationships, setting boundaries, protecting yourself from manipulation, and learning to value yourself even when the people you love don't value you. I need your support to reach others who might be struggling with similar situations, who might need to hear that it's okay to say no. It's okay to set limits. It's okay to demand respect, even from family members. So subscribe. Share this video. Help me build a community of people who understand that love without respect isn't really love. And that protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Now I want to hear from you. And I want you to really think about this question and answer honestly in the comments. If someone you've been financially supporting for years told you to stop interfering in their life, would you cut off the money immediately like I did? Or would you continue helping them despite their disrespect? And why? Have you ever been in a situation where you had to choose between being generous and being respected? How did you handle it? Comment below and share your story. Share your perspective. Tell me if I was right or wrong. Tell me what you would have done differently. Because your experiences matter. Your wisdom matters. And together, we can learn from each other's struggles and support each other through the complicated, painful realities of family dynamics and financial manipulation. Thank you for watching, dear ones. Thank you for listening. And remember, your worth is not determined by what you give others. Your value is inherent. And anyone who only wants you for your money doesn't deserve you at all. Standing up for yourself, even when it's painful, even when it costs you relationships, that's not selfishness.